10 spooky stories. So there's going to be a mixture of fictional and non-fictional stories for you to enjoy. Please let me know in the comments section down below which of these stories you enjoyed the most. Followed Me by a Car. Written by Anonymous and narrated by Spookaria. This is a reminder for people to always stay safe. I don't know what could have happened, but I doubt it was anything good. So, I guess I should start my story. I don't like going out at night on my own as it is. I lived in one of the rougher areas of town where the crime rate was high. So, the idea of being out at night wasn't a great one. I always grew up looking over my shoulder just in case anything would happen. I have a pretty good sense about these sorts of things. You could say I'm fairly street smart. If, on the rare occasion, I had to walk somewhere late at night, I'd take my taser with me, but I try to avoid going out at night at all. I got a job at the local corner gas station, and it was my shift. I already had to deal with my share of petty crime, and I knew what to do in a tricky situation. We've had people come in and try to rob the place more than once. I'm tiny too, about 5'2", but I can handle myself. My shift ended late in the night, or rather, it was the early morning. When I got off work, my bus didn't show up. And this wasn't uncommon. Public transportation isn't always reliable or entirely safe in my area. So I texted my brother as a backup. Normally, my boss or a family member would come to pick me up to make sure I got home safe. My boss was a good dude. That is, if the bus didn't get there in time. Unfortunately for me, neither my boss nor my older brother were able to come pick me up to take me home. I was a little worried. I didn't bring my taser with me, but I had to get home. I knew not to get involved in anyone else's business, to walk like I had somewhere to be. Not look scared, but not look like I wanted to fight either. I took a deep breath and left the bus stop. I fiddled with my keys, putting each one between my fingers, and walked down the pathway. I could hear sounds of people yelling at each other, dogs barking, and the occasional car would drive past. All of this was pretty normal. I had to walk down the main street until I had to turn onto one of the smaller streets my apartment was on. I kept walking when I noticed that somebody was slowly driving behind me. I'd heard stories of girls being grabbed at night, and I didn't want to join their number. I kept walking, pretending that I didn't notice anything was different, and I didn't look back. Sometimes, these sorts of creeps got off on knowing that you're scared. When I was about halfway home, I could see the headlights, and with a sideward glance, I saw a man sitting in the car. He was watching me, intently. He looked at me without blinking or moving. I had to cross a road that led onto one of the quiet streets nearby, but he cut me off. I tried to go behind the car. He began to reverse it and sped up when I tried to go in front. I was starting to get really scared now. I couldn't hide it anymore. All I can remember was his cold, dead eyes. He gestured for me to get in. I shook my head and I knew I didn't have a lot of time to think. I acted purely on impulse. Since he was blocking my path home, and I didn't want to lead him back there anyway, I decided to head back for work. I could have gone to one of the houses, but it wasn't uncommon for them to ignore requests to come in. That's how high the crime rate was here. I turned and began to run back to my workplace. I could see the lights briefly. My lungs ached, and I was breathless by the time I reached my workplace. When I got inside, my coworker helped me. I watched the man through the glass. I knew deep down he had bad intentions towards me, but I tried to get a look at both the car and the number plate. My coworker knew that something must have happened. He reassured me and checked to see if I was okay. Then he called the cops for me and made sure I waited inside the store where I was safe rather than waiting outside. The cops came and I gave my statement, and my family came to pick me up. Since then, my family always insists on picking me up from work, and as soon as I'm able to drive myself, I'll drive. I'm not walking home alone ever again, especially in this area. Stay safe out there. Bad hotel. Hi. Okay. There were times during my life I'm not proud of what I've done or where I've ended up. I began drinking heavily after my girlfriend broke up with me. She was never entirely comfortable with being out of the closet, and she decided to end it. I was pretty devastated by the loss of the relationship. I've never been a friendly or a social drunk. In the end, I ended up losing my job and a lot of my friends. Unfortunately, I also tend to get violent and my parents kicked me out of the house. I don't really blame them for that. I was dangerous. I was able to get a room at a dodgy hotel. Now this place had a terrible reputation at best. It was known for violence and other seedy crimes. I never thought I would end up in a place like this. I never felt safe, and for good reason. When I would go to my room, I always made sure I was carrying something I could use as a weapon. Whenever I would settle down to sleep, I would barricade the door in order to stop anyone from trying to break in while I slept. Whenever I left the room, I would be leered at or had men ask me to do sexual things. I couldn't be out at this place. I really didn't feel safe. Being so miserable, I was tempted to drink more, but the anxiety made it harder for me to relax. Fortunately, I ran into a youth worker who talked to me about things and obviously knew I was having a rough time. She offered to speak to my parents for me. I had been ignoring their messages, and I was ashamed with how my life had gone. She insisted. My parents allowed me to come back home on a couple of conditions. 1, I had to get alcohol counseling. 2, I needed to apologize. And 3, I needed to promise that I would never get drunk again. All pretty reasonable in my opinion. The day I was going to move back home came and I was so happy. I packed my small amount of possessions into my bloated backpack and left. 3 of the regulars cornered me and leered at me, demanding that I do sexual favors for them. They were stopped by the owner and I left, never looking back, and I got my life back on track. I hate staying at any type of hotels or motels now. I always get urges to barricade the room and all of that. It's scary how close I came to slipping through the cracks. The Russian Sleep Experiment. Written by Unknown and narrated by ladyspookariayt. Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days. Using an experimental gas-based stimulant, they were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake, so the gas didn't kill them, since it was toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed-circuit cameras, so they only had microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole-sized windows into the chamber to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on but no bedding, running water and toilet, and enough dried food to last all 5 for over a month. The test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemy of the state during World War II. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised, falsely, that they would be freed if they submitted to the test and did not sleep for 30 days. Their conversations and activities were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past. And the general tone of their conversations took on a darker aspect after the 4-day mark. After 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and events that led them to where they were, and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternately whispering to their microphones and the one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, they all seemed to think they could win the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades, the other suspects in captivity with them. At first, the researchers suspected this was an effect of the gas itself. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber, repeatedly yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. He continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most surprising thing about this behavior is how the other captives reacted to it. Or rather, didn't react to it. They continued whispering to the microphones until the second of the captives started to scream. The 2 non-screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them calmly over the glass portholes. The screaming promptly stopped. So did the whispering to the microphones. After 3 more days passed, the researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they were working, since they thought it impossible that no sound could be coming with 5 people inside. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very high level of strenuous exercise. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they said they would not do to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response from the captives they were afraid were either dead or vegetables. They announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom." To their surprise, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice respond, "We no longer wish to be freed." Debate broke out among the researchers and the military forces funding the research. Unable to provoke any more response using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed with the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air, and immediately voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for the life of loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened, and soldiers sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one could rightly call the state that any of them were in life. The food rations past day 5 had not been so much as touched. There were chunks of meat from the dead test subjects' thighs and chests stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, blocking the drain and allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The destruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not with teeth as the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. The abdominal organs below the ribcage of all 4 test subjects had been removed, while the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place. The skin and most of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the ribcage. All the blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had just been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could be seen to be working, digesting food. It quickly became apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh, that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility. But still, many refused to return to the chamber to remove the test subjects. They continued to scream to be left in the chamber, and alternately begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on, lest they fall asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Another was gravely injured by having his testicles ripped off and an artery in his leg severed by one of the subject's teeth. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives, if you count the ones that committed suicide in the weeks following the incident. In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured, and he bled out almost immediately. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected with more than 10 times the human dose of a morphine derivative, and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs and arm of one doctor, when his heart was seen to beat for a full 2 minutes after he had bled out, to the point there was more air in his vascular system than blood. Even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, attacking anyone in reach and just repeating the word "more" over and over, weaker and weaker, until he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility. The 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake. The most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back within his body, it was found he was effectively immune to the sedative they had given him to prepare him for the surgery. He fought furiously against his restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought out to put him under. He managed to tear most of the way through a 4-inch wide leather strap on one wrist, even through the weight of a 200-pound soldier holding that wrist as well. It took only a little more anesthetic than normal to put him under. And the instant his eyelids fluttered and closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject that died on the operating table, it was found that his blood had tripled the normal amount of oxygen. His muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had broken 9 bones in his struggle to not be subdued. Most of them were from the force his own muscles had exerted on them. The second survivor had been the first of a group of 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords destroyed, he was unable to beg or object to surgery, and he only reacted by shaking his head violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought near him. He shook his head yes when someone suggested, reluctantly, that they try surgery without anesthetic, and did not react for the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and attempting to cover them with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that it should be medically possible for the patient to still be alive. One terrified nurse assisting the surgery stated she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times, whenever his eyes met hers. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming this must be something of drastic importance, the surgeon had a pen and pad fetched so the patient could write his message. It was simple.
Keep cutting.
The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic as well, although they had been injected with a paralytic for the duration of the operation. The surgeon found it impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed continuously. Once paralyzed, the subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short period of time, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the stimulant gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves, why they had ripped out their own guts, and why they wanted to be given the gas again. Only one response was given:
I must remain awake.
All 3 test subjects' restraints were reinforced, and they were placed back into the chamber, awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of their military benefactors for having failed the stated goals of their project, considered euthanizing the surviving subjects. The commanding officer, an ex-KGB, instead saw potential, and wanted to see what would happen if they were put back on the gas. The researchers strongly objected, but were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for a long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment it was let slip they were going back on the gas. It was obvious. At this point, all 3 were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might. First left, then right, then left again for something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off his pillow and blinking rapidly. Having been the first to be wired for EEG, most of the researchers were monitoring his brainwaves in surprise. They were normal most of the time, and sometimes flatlined inexplicably. It looked as if he were repeatedly suffering brain death, before returning to normal. As they focused on the paper scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eye slip shut. At the same moment his head hit the pillow, his brainwaves immediately changed to that of deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped. The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed the same flatlines as the one who had just died from falling asleep. The commander gave the order to seal the chamber with both subjects inside, as well as 3 researchers. One of the 3 immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank between the eyes, then turned the gun on the mute subject, and blew his brains out as well. He pointed his gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to a bed, as the remaining members of the medical and research team fled the room. I won't be locked in here with those things. Not with you. He screamed at the man strapped to the table. What are you? He demanded. I must know. The subject smiled.
Have you forgotten so easily?
The subject asked.
We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at the very moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go to the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread.
The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly choked out.
So, nearly free.
Neckbeard Creeper. Sent in by Anonymous. And narrated by ladyspookariayt. Hiya, so I decided to send this in on a whim. First, some backstory about me. I'm a 25-year-old female. I go to university studying psychology, and I work as a receptionist part-time. I'm also caring for and live with my elderly grandmother, but I don't care for her alone. I'm an only child, so there are no siblings, and my parents passed away in my late teens. My grandmother raised me, and the extended family helped out quite a lot. In fact, they still do. However, taking care of her still takes up a lot of my time. I do my best to keep in touch with my old and new friends. Just, people get busy, and they understand because they have their own busy lives. So, I'm not a quiet person by any means. However, I am careful about the people I do end up allowing in my life. I don't have the time or the energy to deal with drama or bad behavior from people. I have a pretty good group of friends. So, my friends and I organized a D&D session for one night. Cool. I asked one of my cousins to look after my grandmother, and she agreed. This was a fortnightly or monthly event, depending on our schedules, so it wasn't out of the norm. When I left the house, I gave them both a hug and kiss goodnight before I set off. I drove there, and when I arrived, I saw we had a larger group than usual. We had the core base of players, then there were the people who wanted to occasionally play, and other people who just wanted to heckle from the sidelines or just hang out with everyone. I wasn't in the mood to play, so I would be one of the hangers-on, and I wanted to catch up with people. The group would occasionally bring other people who they thought might fit in or who wanted to get involved with D&D. Sometimes they were family, friends or workmates who they thought would fit in. It was a chance to meet some new people and make some new friends. In fact, that was how I found the friend group many, many years ago. There were a couple of new people, so I thought I would go over and see what they were like. I said hello to the new girl. I'll call her Sally, just to keep things anonymous. She was nice. We were of a similar age and she had always had an interest in D&D, but never had a group local to her. We talked about her job, her living situation, and made other small talk as we started to get to know each other. Her other group of friends were not into D&D, so it made it harder for her to try it out. She found the group through our mutual friend David, who was her workmate, and agreed to tag along to see if she liked it. We talked for a while about the items she would need, and I reminded her there was no rush to get anything. We had extras she could borrow until she was ready to buy her own. We were laughing and chatting for a little while. It was a great conversation. I wouldn't call her a friend yet, but we were definitely on our way to becoming friends. Things were off to a fantastic start. One of the new dudes came over, and I knew by looking at him, there was a chance I wouldn't like him. I know. Don't judge a book by its cover. However, he was the definition of a neckbeard. I don't think he bathed, and had an overall scruffy appearance, and had a habit of standing uncomfortably close to people. We shuffled away from him, and he kept trying to get close to us, like he wanted to touch us. We moved into the kitchen and put the kitchen counter between us and him. Unfortunately, he sat down on one of the stools. For a minute, I could have sworn he was trying to get a look at my breasts. Again. His BO hit us before we saw him, and it made my eyes water. Sally and I looked at each other in disgust for a moment, hoping he would take the hint and just leave. Either the neckbeard didn't notice or didn't care. We stared at him for a moment, but since we were friends with someone who brought him, and we were friends with the host, we didn't want to make a fuss. So I decided to break the silence and said, "Hey." He leaned forward to us, and I could smell the sickly aroma of his breath. Dental hygiene was certainly not on his agenda. "Looks like the pair of you are hitting it off." He leered creepily at us. Sally looked incredibly uncomfortable and mumbled something under her breath. I couldn't quite catch it. Sally was well endowed, and his gaze lingered there for far too long. Actually, lingered is too mild a word. He outright stared at them. Sally was quiet and tried to turn away from him. She was new here, and I think she didn't want to cause any problems. I was about to comfort her and make an excuse to leave when, I'd love to see you both naked together. He gave a disgusting look at us. I'm pretty sure he thought it was sexy, but it made him look even more repulsive. He chuckled and leaned closer to us. Maybe I can join in too. You need to have a man in there for a good time. I've heard the stereotypes about neckbeards. Some of them I always thought were a little exaggerated, but this just... it was so disgusting and gross. I never thought I'd be in one of these stories. Absolutely not. What the hell is wrong with you? You're so repulsive. Go the hell away, I said firmly. Sally was silent. The neckbeard kept looking at me in his creepy way. He leaned forward and whispered, I like it better when they struggle. It feels better. My stomach turned, and I had to resist the urge to strike him. This was so not okay on so many levels. Now, our friend group was not the type to tolerate this type of behavior. Unfortunately, we were in the kitchen alone. Most of them would have either been in the lounge room playing or were outside smoking. So, I knew I needed to get loud about this. No! Listen! Get the hell away from us and stop creeping on us! I yelled. And yep, that definitely got the attention of the rest of the group. People came in from outside and from the lounge room. The neckbeard backed off and made excuses about what had happened. He said I was being all crazy and jealous because he was flirting with Sally instead of me. I could have sworn I heard several snorts of laughter amongst our group of friends. I told them our side of the story, and Sally backed me up, agreeing with what had been said. Josh, the host, said to the neckbeard it was best for him to leave and not to come next time, that he wasn't welcome anymore. The neckbeard kept going with his protests and his lies. He started sulking like a child, and I couldn't believe I was watching a full-grown man behave like this. He started screaming at us about how we were asking for it, and that we were teasers who wanted him. It was so hard to not laugh in his face. That everything we did was for attention. His retorts eventually made no sense at all, and finally, after the last tantrum, he left or was rather herded outside. And we all enjoyed the rest of our night. Scott, the one who had brought the neckbeard from work, apologized to everyone about it, especially Sally and I. He said he didn't think he would be like that. That he was a quiet guy from work who didn't sound like he had many friends. So, what happened next? Essentially, the neckbeard went on social media and blasted us on some incel forum. The other little incels agreed with him, and yeah. So, neckbeard, I hope to never see you or experience the trauma of your aroma, ever, ever again. I'm getting married, so I have to kill someone. Written and narrated by Spookaria. There are some family traditions you can never truly escape. No matter how hard you try. I moved away from home when I was 18, like many people do, and finally the chance to become independent. Free from your parents watching over your every move. I wanted to see the world. I wanted my own life. I wanted freedom. I wanted to study and not be bound by superstition. It is a gift to live the life you truly want for yourself. I leapt at the opportunity when it appeared to me, a scholarship at a college I always dreamed of attending. This wasn't something that was normally done in my family. I didn't care that I would become estranged from them, or that they would be angry with me. All that mattered was I was doing what I wanted. I spent some time traveling, enjoying myself, and finally settled down with a relatively average job. But I was happy. The freedom of being able to live my life was worth it. I made a lot of friends who became my family. My real family. Every so often my parents would call me, ask how I was doing and when I would be coming home. I would answer, chat mindlessly to them, and after a while, I would stop answering their calls completely. Then their text messages. And finally, They're written letters. Occasionally I would dream of them and their traditions. And to keep the memories at bay, I would take medication to stop them. But they never truly disappeared. Always trying to lure me back. 10 years later, I'm engaged to a wonderful man and my life has been going well. Sure, we bicker sometimes, and have disagreements that typicals usually do. He's always wanted to meet my parents, and I've always been weird about introducing him to them. Outwardly, they're your normal suburban family, and everyone has at least one relative they're embarrassed by. A skeleton in the family closet isn't rare. Most families have some kind of secret they wish to keep hidden. Sometimes they get whispered about after a person dies. Many family secrets tend to come out then. I've heard some families have a suit made from human skin. Others are filled with Karens, and some have weird conspiracy theorists. Shh. I need to keep telling you. I'm nearly done, I promise. When my family lived in the clans, it meant there were certain rites that needed to be conducted. Our gods, to you, and to many others, would have been considered demons. Our allegiance is to them. They don't have any to us. We have obligations to them that must be satisfied with blood. Things were not always this way. The tradition began when our home sank beneath the waves, in a time when God and man would often walk with each other. When it fell beneath the waves that left countless people dead. So many families had been lost to the sea. We lost everything. Most of our elders died, and because of that, our songs and traditions of the dead were gone. The survivors washed up on a strange foreign shore and were vulnerable to attack. After they suffered purging and torment, the survivors screamed and pleaded to the gods, willing to offer up their lives in order to protect their children. The last thing they had. Our 7 gods appeared out of the mist, and they too had suffered. Their once pure forms had been broken, twisted, a shadow of their former selves. In return for my ancestors' survival and protection, sacrifices had to be made. My ancestors accepted. The gods were not limitless in their power, and the destruction of their temples had twisted their souls. I know. Shh. Be patient. Be patient. I've always had vivid dreams, and quite a few times where I dreamt would come true. The gods would come to me as I slept, whispering threats and warning me what would come if I didn't conduct the rites. It was never explained to me why the gods did this. And there was a time when I debated not getting married so I could avoid doing all this. Ultimately, it is selfish of me. Deep down, I know it is. But he wants to get married, and so do I. There are many more rites that need to be done, and... I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get into a not-so-quick history lesson. I've never done... Where was I? So, naturally, my fiancé does not know this about me or my family. And I don't think he would want to be with me if he found out the truth. I can't blame him. Not for that. This will be something I keep from him until the day I die. I told him I needed to visit my parents alone. And I heard each whisper from the gods, calling me to conduct the rite or incur their wrath. They whispered to me that they needed this. They needed the sacrifice. I've had my hen's night or a bachelorette party. It was pretty stereotypical. Plenty of lewd jokes, a stripper, a lot of alcoholic drinks, and other wilder things. Yet, 3 nights before the wedding date, I must take a life, conduct the ritual, and offer the heart up to the idol. Shh, I'll explain to you. Why only one when I mention 7 gods? Each cut, each way we prepare the sacrifice is important. A tribute to each god. And the person must remain alive throughout until the final cut is taken. You can't just murder outright. It needs to be done right. And I assure you, I take no pleasure in this. My gods tell us that the sacrificed needs to know what is coming. First, I will cut the Achilles tendons to prevent escape. Then I will strip the skin from their hands and leave them bare, the bones showing. I will pierce the stomach and pull it out, careful as I cut through your muscles. You must stay alive throughout. I will take your eyes, then your tongue. During this, I need to keep you alive. Please stay alive or I have to do it again. I can't do this a second time. I don't want the gods to be angry with me. I will puncture each of your lungs, and before the gods claim your life, I will whisper the final prayer before I slit your throat. The blood will fill the chalice, and I will paint my face with the symbols of each god before I drink the blood. Your blood, and I will take in your power. It will be the last thing you see. Few get to feel the power of the gods. You are blessed beyond belief. I'm doing you a favor here. Afterwards, you will thank me for it. You will, I promise. I know you think this is strange. I chose you because your death will easily go unnoticed by people. You don't have family or friends who will miss you. Once your pain is done, it is over. Shh. It's okay. It's okay. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that this must happen. You're innocent in all of this. But I must do what they ask. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please feel free to leave a comment. I would also like to thank Dylan who made the thumbnail for me. Check him out if you haven't already. This video was made with the support of my Patreons. If you wish to join their rank, the link is in the description below. And I also have some amazing merch for you to pick up. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you. First time exploring. A small group of friends and I had really gotten into urban exploration. We would watch plenty of YouTube videos for hours every night together, and finally, we plucked up the courage to do it ourselves. At some point, we wanted to make our own YouTube channel and possibly earn some money. But since we might try it sometime, I'm not going to give you the name of the channel. We took our GoPros and decided to take the plunge. We decided not to tell our parents what we were doing, in case they would try to stop us or lecture us about the risks. We thought we knew all of them, and we knew what to look out for. Any sign of trouble and we would be out of there. Honestly though, we didn't care. There was an abandoned house nearby that had a seedy reputation for drugs, homeless people, and other smaller crimes. The lawn was overgrown, and it had been boarded up. There was graffiti all over the walls. People had been coming here for a long time now. We weren't the first, and certainly wouldn't be the last. We wanted to try doing it during the middle of the day. If it went well, we would try going back to the place late at night and see how that goes. We recorded us going in and ignored the signs of warning that the building was condemned for whatever reason. Because we were nervous, we were giggling like idiots, so yeah, we failed when it came to stealth. There was moldy furniture with broken glass, and I reminded everyone that we should have brought some masks to prevent us inhaling black mold. It is a health hazard that a lot of urban explorers don't worry about enough. I could also hear running water somewhere in the building, but I'm not sure exactly where it came from. I heard the creaking floorboards and didn't think too much about it. Older homes would often frequently make noise. I didn't realize the danger we were truly in. And now I'm older and wiser. The black mold really worries me. I heard a scream. The floor under one of my friends had collapsed, and we found him. He had a deep cut on his leg from a rusty nail. He also had a broken leg. We called an ambulance and got him out. The police also came, and fortunately, we got off with a warning, and we were lucky. It isn't just homeless people or addicts you need to worry about. The buildings themselves can be very dangerous. Just remember, these houses are abandoned for a reason. Some of them have been condemned because of safety reasons. My friend ended up being okay. He has a scar now that he likes to show off and tell the story about. Usually, he makes it sound far more dramatic, and he had to get several shots afterwards. Unfortunately for the house, it was completely demolished under orders from the council. And that was in part our doing. Stay safe when you explore these old houses. It is pretty risky. He stalked me to my home. Written by Anonymous and narrated by Lady Spookaria. I was 17 when this happened. I had spent the night at a friend's place and it was still quite warm outside, still summer, so I decided to walk home from the little get-together. There were about 10 of us, each of us carrying on and watching movies. Nothing exciting. I gave everyone a hug and kiss goodnight. I had a can of drink and began to walk home. My house wasn't far. It was just a couple of blocks and the night air was pretty pleasant. The area was known for being pretty safe too. I had forgotten how many times I had walked back home without any issues at all. I said my goodbyes and set off. It was quiet and I was enjoying being out in the fresh night air. A man walked past me. Now, most men are pretty considerate and will try to show that they aren't dangerous. I expected to hear his footsteps. I tried to discreetly look over my shoulder at him. He just stood there, watching me. I felt a shiver go down my spine. I didn't recognize him from anywhere. Immediately I wanted to run home, but I did my best to hide my fears. I doubled my speed, trying and failing to look unbothered by the situation. He changed directions and began to follow me. I fiddled around in my pocket for my phone. The short journey seemed so long and I called one of my friends. "Hey, how are you?" I greeted her brightly, still trying to make it sound like it was a normal conversation. I didn't think at the time that I should call the police or something. I thought if they heard I was talking to someone, he might think twice about actually starting something. "Hey, did you leave something here?" "No, I just wanted to talk." Thing is, I hate talking on the phone. I never call and everyone has to call me first. Even when I do call someone, I give the shortest, most abrupt answers. So, she was pretty suspicious. "Are you sure you're okay?" He didn't seem to care. I kept walking and he wouldn't stop following me. The pace of his footsteps increased. I walked faster and I knew I shouldn't have gone home, but I wanted to be where I felt safest. I knocked frantically on the door, hoping for one of my parents to open it. He didn't run towards me. He just waited on the path and watched. I could barely see his face. Then I heard footsteps again behind me and my knocking became more intense. When the door finally opened, I practically leapt inside and my dad gave me a confused look. I pointed outside and said that some creep was following me. My dad is a big guy, he's scary but a total teddy bear. But he can be scary though. He opened the door and the guy ran off. Every so often though, especially when I'm home alone, I swear I get a glimpse at him, staring through one of my windows. ICQ Creeper. Hey, so I'm in my late 30s now. This story takes place when I was a teen, and when we just got the internet, so it was pretty new. My parents were pretty controlling about when and where I could go out. I used to lie and tell them I was doing schoolwork on the computer so that they would just leave me alone. I had several instant messaging accounts that I would use. My favorite ones were ICQ and AOL Messenger. And I would go into the chat rooms. Sometimes you'd have to deal with creeps in there, but it was easy enough to block them. It was a slow night and all my friends were busy with whatever they were doing. A message popped up from a mutual friend with a simple, "Hey," and I answered back, innocently enough. The friend, Jack, knew one of my friends, and that was how we ended up talking. We spoke a little before, nothing serious though. As we got talking, I found we had a lot of similar tastes in music, movies, and art. It was nice talking to him. It was getting late and I had school the next day, so I told him I needed to go and get some sleep. He said something like, "Aw, don't go," but I had to go. I said goodbye and logged off. The next day, I didn't get back online until later in the evening. When I opened up my AOL, I saw I had a lot of messages. Normally I'd have a couple at least, but this was a surprise. About 80% of them were from him. They ranged from asking if he had done anything wrong, demanding to know why I didn't want to speak with him, and I had to admit I felt extremely uncomfortable reading them. Still, he was a friend of a friend, so I didn't want to cause any problems. I told him I needed to go to sleep and that he didn't do anything wrong. I can't remember how quickly he answered, but he said that he missed me. We barely knew each other. Our conversation had gone well, but this was getting to be too much. I had an unsettled feeling in my stomach. I didn't say this though. I think I said something along the lines of, "Aw." It was pretty weird, but I ended up ignoring it. The conversation moved on. We started talking about how our days went. More of my friends came online, and naturally I wanted to talk with them, so my responses to Jack got slower. Then he began to get agitated with me. I asked my friend if he was always like this. She said she didn't really speak to him much. Since he wasn't actually a friend, I decided to block him and thought that would be the end of it. I went to watch a movie with my parents and came back to find a new account had added me. It looked similar to the type that my friends would have. Remember the whole XD raw phase? I added the account and said hello. Immediately the person asked why I blocked them. I asked who it was and instantly told them to leave me alone. Blocked. Again. They tried to add me with a different account. Again, blocked. This went on for days. Weeks even. This isn't the scariest story that happened when I was younger, but it really freaked me out at the time. Stay safe out there. I want my bones back. Written and narrated by Spookaria. Every night I look through my window at them, wanting them back. I need them. I need them back. I never believed that it would happen this way. I never thought I would care. I never thought I would care that they ended up this way. They are part of me. They belong to me. I thought, once my soul was free from my body, I would travel freely to heaven and no longer be bound to this earth. I would finally gain the freedom I have always craved. But this keeps me here. I'm stuck, and I can never move forward or back. Trapped. Instead, here I linger in both isolation and in suffering. My bones stand upright, unnatural, and propped up on a stand in a classroom. They have been properly cleansed and scrubbed to a perfect, crisp, soulless white. The flesh was long stripped away, boiled to remove any sign of humanity. The person I once was. And it was all washed down the drain. Anything that made me was stripped away. I look into the black pits that had once been my eyes. At one time, I gazed out at the world filled with hope and promise. I recognize it as mine. But none of them know my name. They don't know who I am. There are times when I can barely remember my own name. My soul aches and I will never feel complete without it again. The university students walk through the room while the lecturer tells them about one bone or another. My bones are part of the exhibit. None of them know my name. None of them care to know either. All they care about is their grade. He would gesture to my limbs, lifting them. I could feel his hands on me and the coldness of my bones all the time. I want it to stop. Please, just let it stop. Just stop touching them. I want to go home. I want to go in the earth. I want to be whole again. They never hear my cries or my pleas for them to stop this. I follow them around trying to find an answer, hoping that they will see or hear me. It has been such a long time. I wanted to be buried, but instead, I am here. I hear the students whisper of a ghost in the university. I'm not alone in haunting this place. There are many others who are as lost as I am. Without the warmth of the earth and the offerings of our descendants, where will we go? Our rest is disturbed. They don't hear my words. And if they did, would they try to stop what is happening? It is normal. There are bones from ancient lands and ones from far away. Or far, far too close. They whisper in languages long forgotten and walk the empty corridors at night, seeking either answers or retribution for the crimes done to their remains. I just want my bones back. They are so dry, so cold. Whenever I reach out to touch my own arm, I can feel the slightest tingle. But when their hands your hands touch me, I feel nothing but anger and pain. Give me back my bones. On one of the rare occasions, someone actually saw me and heard my words. I was shocked, and so was she. I never believed that there would be anyone who could see me, truly see me, speak to me. I practically ran towards her, wailing and sobbing, happy and ready to finally speak with someone. She screamed and fled out of the building. I didn't see her for several weeks before she made another appearance. She wore a talisman of some type around her neck, and I couldn't approach her. I screamed and begged for her to listen to me, that I didn't want to hurt her. She didn't believe me. Before I could react, she secretly planted items around the room, and I felt myself being pushed outside. Whenever I would try to enter again, I would be roughly pushed back. Please let me go back in. I haven't felt pain like this. Not since I died. The pain was incredible. I can't be close to my bones. I can only gaze at them from a distance. I feel so lost. So alone. Give me back my bones. My pitiful existence is now drifting around outside. Hopeless and lonely, without even the other spirits to speak to. Trying to peer in to catch a glimpse of my bones, when the curtains aren't shut. They took them from me. I miss them. I want them back. And I will never have them back. I will do anything to feel alive again. And there are plenty of bones here. It doesn't matter to me that they're still in use. I want my bones back. If I can't have my bones back, I will have to start collecting someone else's. Starting with yours. The coming out creeper. I was shy in my younger years and had a lot of trouble talking to girls. I'm a lesbian, and it took me a lot of years to not only realize this, but to feel ready and safe to come out of the closet. Funnily enough, this incident is what encouraged me to get out there and not rely on technology to find someone. There were a lot of teen dating chat rooms that were available back in the day. Sure, my friends and I would joke that it was mainly filled with pervs, but that didn't stop us. Sometimes it was a lot of fun to mess with them and see what we could get away with. I'd actually made a couple of friends in those chat rooms. They knew about my sexuality, and I didn't need to hide it anymore. It felt like I could finally breathe, in a way that I couldn't in my real life. We'd all send photos to each other. Usually it was just us making silly faces or things. In the end though, it turned into flirty pictures, and finally, one of my friends asked me if I liked her. I think I sent back a blushing emoji. She pushed me to tell her, and I finally admitted it. I was nervous. I could see that she was typing something. And finally, she told me that she liked me too. I breathed a sigh of relief, and we kept talking more. After a couple of weeks, she became my girlfriend. My first one, and I had plans to go meet her in the city. I live in a pretty rural and conservative area, so the idea of going into the city and being out was definitely exciting. I arrived and I went to meet her at the place we both agreed to meet up. I waited for about 20 minutes and wondered if she stood me up. I texted her, and to my relief, she told me she was running late. I told her to hurry and sat waiting. I was excited. Someone approached me, and it was someone I didn't expect. A middle-aged man walked over to me and greeted me with my name. I was confused. Who the fuck was this? Hi? I'm Jessica's dad. She isn't feeling well. What the fuck? I didn't know what to say, so I just said, oh, okay. I was texting her, and she said she was still coming to meet me? Yeah, he said. She sent me ahead to come get you and bring you back to the hotel, he answered. Something inside me knew this wasn't normal. She and I had agreed to meet here, and there was absolutely no mention of a hotel before. Not to mention her dad. I looked around to see if anyone could help me. People seemed oblivious, and I didn't want to be rude. No. I wanted to meet with her first, I replied. Then he said this. Come on, you don't want to hurt her feelings, do you? I didn't want to hurt her feelings, just... this was weird. My hand was in my bag, and I sent Jessica a text. I heard his phone vibrate. He had the phone. He had Jessica's phone. He froze for a moment and just stood there. I don't have much of a poker face, so it would have been obvious that I was freaking out about something. I have to go, I said, immediately stood up and walked away. She didn't try and call me. I got so many texts from her later on though, ranging from please go with my dad to complaining that she wanted to meet me. She said I was paranoid. I was on edge all the way home. I had to be careful to make sure I wasn't being followed. I told my parents and just said I was meeting a friend, not my girlfriend. We called the police and made a report, but didn't hear anything more about it. When I got back to my computer, the account was gone. One good thing though, a couple of months later I came out and it felt amazing. I don't hide who I am anymore, and I never will again. I hope you enjoy those stories, my little spooklings. Please let me know which was your favourite in the comment section down below. Would you like to see more compilations? Don't forget to tell me. This video is made with the support of my incredible Patreons, channel members, subscribers, and viewers. All support is greatly appreciated. Don't forget to check out my merch and my other links in the description below. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.